Hi, this is Sam Sorbo. Kevin and I have discovered a great American company that supports our traditional values and the work we're doing to restore our culture from the lies of the left. Check out sorbo.nutramedix.com for great health wellness products like my favorite. They have a stress support kit, which I use every day. And I have to say, it really does help. So check it out at sorbo.nutramedix with an X, nutramedix.com. And don't forget to use the code Sorbo at checkout. Thanks for listening. And welcome back to the Sam Sorbo Show. I'm joined now by an author who has written over 250 articles for various publications, the Wall Street Journal, Washington Times, Chicago Tribune, Barron's Financial, also the New York Post, USA Today, many, many others. Obviously, he's prolific. He's written for newspapers and journals also in Japan and Europe. And he is the author of a new book called Rediscovering America, which calls on Americans to rediscover their past in order to save their future. I'm joined now by a senior fellow at the Discovery Institute, Scott S. Powell. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Sam. Glad to be here.
Well, it's great to see you in person. And this book is phenomenal. And it's something that I think we really need. You got David Horowitz to write the introduction. How much arm twisting did that take?
Well, David wrote the introduction to my first book back in the 1980s before I went into business. Once I was in business, I didn't have time to write books, but it's really wonderful to get back into the area of public policy and really thinking seriously about all these important issues of our times.
And so what do you hope to accomplish with this book? Obviously, inspire Americans to rediscover their past, but to what end?
Well, what I did in the book, the book is not a traditional linear history. It is a collection of stories about the key transitional periods that the country went through, highlighting the great people, the great leaders of those times, starting really with the discovery of Columbus, the Pilgrims, the Puritans, the founders, the Civil War period, and then modern times with the Civil Rights Movement and the wars, the Memorial Day, Veterans Day. I use the holidays really as a way of talking about these important periods of our history. And what I did was I identified about 9 qualities of character that the leaders of these various periods had that made all the difference in their cities. And many of these qualities, have fallen into non-use, or they're hard to find in our political leaders of today. For instance, courage. How many political leaders would we say have courage today? Almost none.
Yeah, I don't know if it's courage or, I know that I believe that what Donald Trump did in the debates when he took on Hillary Clinton on the issue of partial birth abortion, I would say was reckless, and I applaud him for it. But I don't know that it was courageous. I think that he was simply saying what he firmly believed. I don't think that it was political, because by all political standards, it's a killing issue. It's a third rail. And so I'm trying to think of when I've seen a politician be actually courageous. And I have to say, most politicians seem to make their policy decisions based on polling. So that's the least courageous, right? That's anti-courageous, if you will. Can you tell me when? Give us an example of a politician who made a courageous decision. You got to go back in history, right?
Yes, right. That's really what I try to do in this book, is highlight these great individuals and the qualities of character they had that made a huge difference in leadership and outcomes. And of course, we're faced with many challenges now, not the least of which is this brazen stripping away of our country of our rights as citizens. The Bill of Rights has been gutted. I would argue that 8 out of those 10 amendments, the first 10 amendments, have been violated and are effectively no longer protecting us and our freedom.
Right. And so, but give us an example from the book of a courageous political leader or a courageous act of a political leader, just to give us a little bit of a taste from the book.
Well, the most modern one would probably be Martin Luther King. And King, while he wasn't a political leader, he was a spiritual leader, and his calling was to rectify and fulfill the vision of the Declaration of Independence. He said in his "I Have a Dream" speech, of course, that he looked forward to a society that where people would not be judged by the color of their skin, but the content of their character. He also said that he came to collect on a promissory note. That promissory note was the Declaration of Independence. Now, he had a very deep mind, and he thought that groupthink was a major problem. And so he called people to think independently, to think courageously. I mean, he was a courageous leader. He went to jail 29 times, and ultimately, of course, he gave up his life through assassination for the cause in which he believed. So he'd be a great example of courage.
How about Reagan?
Reagan was a courageous leader, absolutely.
Because you spurred my memory, because I believe that Martin Luther King wrote the "I Have a Dream" portion of his "I Have a Dream" speech, like almost on the walk to the venue. That it was a point of just an inspired moment for him to riff on "I Have a Dream." Not that he didn't have the crux of the speech already to go, but Reagan got a lot of pushback, as far as I know, and this is the stories that we get, and who knows, how true they can be, but he got a lot of pushback. They wanted him not to say "tear down this wall."
That's
And
right.
it went back and forth, and he finally just said, I'm saying it. I'm going to say, or I don't even know if he ran it past them anymore, but he just decided that that's what he was going to do at the Berlin Wall.
And that's a true story. I've spoken to the speechwriter for Ronald Reagan, and that's a true story, that Reagan, vetoed the taking out of that phrase. It was in his speech originally. They asked that he take it out, and he said, no, it stays in the speech. It was a central theme of the speech, actually. Why would you take out the central theme of the speech, right?
I think they disliked the words. They thought that the words were too aggressive. And he was of the mind that they weren't aggressive enough.
That's right. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So give me, what is your favorite moment in the book? What's your favorite American historic moment?
Oh, there are so many, but when we're talking about, President's Day was yesterday, I'd have to say that George Washington probably embodied these great virtues in greater number than probably any other leader. I mean, the man was incredibly courageous. He had persistence. One could argue that the War of Independence was won simply because of his persistence and his resilience, which is another quality. But perhaps most importantly, George Washington was a man of faith and reliance on God. He really believed in God's providence, that without God's help, he couldn't succeed. He couldn't accomplish the impossible. But because of that faith and that reliance and these other qualities of courage and persistence. Of course, we know he won the War of Independence. Now, you also have to include that the French
Luckily,
came
that
in.
much history we still retain in our
Right.
schools.
Now, the French played a role and others played a role. You know, many things came together for that to happen, but it was very unexpected. Who would have thought that this colonial army, the Continental Army of, 20,000 ragtag soldiers, and oftentimes, that was the beginning number of forces. Those forces dwindled, that he could possibly defeat the greatest military power in the world. It was an impossibility, and yet he did. Amazing.
And that took a great deal of courage. The book sounds really fascinating. It's called, it's called Rediscovering America. What, is there a subtitle?
Yes, it's called How the Amazing Stories Behind Our Holidays Tell Us Who We Are as Americans. Or I could have said who we would like to be, or who we used to be. But it's just an incredible story. And, the reader can, it's now #1 on Amazon in the new release in the history genre. You can get the book with a simple search of my name, Scott S. Powell, and Rediscovering America. It'll be the first thing that comes up, the Amazon book. And this is the pre-sale period. You get the lowest price. Don't pay attention to the $28 list price. It'll probably sell for about $19.50 or $20. But it's a wonderful read, designed for busy people. It's short, about 200 pages, and each chapter is a short story in and of itself. So people have told me it's a chapter.
Actually, it sounds like it's a rediscovering history and why we should love reading history book. So it sounds really great. It's not available yet. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yes, you can order it, and you should order it, because you're guaranteed of getting it in the pre-sale period. But it's going to be released, so it'll be sent to you on March 8th. That's only a couple of weeks away.
There we go. Perfect. Well, I really appreciate you coming on the program. Scott S. Powell, the name of the book is Rediscovering America. Thank you so much for joining me. This is the Sam Sorbo Show.